Just real quick before we get into today's video, I just want to remind everybody, if you're new to the channel or maybe you've been following the channel for some time now and you watch my videos, you go through my channel and you say, bro, why don't you have more views? Man, they're suppressing your videos, bro. They're controlling the algorithm. We know. Welcome to the party. I've been dealing with this for more than 3 years now. I agree with you. Like, I think a lot of my videos deserve hundreds of thousands of more views, but that's the reason why I just ask you all kindly and politely, just hit the like button. Make sure you're still subscribed because they will unsubscribe you, and at least share the video with 1 or 2 other people. That's all I ask. I appreciate you all support, especially my Patreon and my channel members. You all mean the world to me since I'm doing this full time now. I cannot express my thanks enough. Without further ado, let's get to the video. So I just discovered one of the most sinister or evil revelations in American history. And that may sound hyperbolic, but I'm sticking with it, especially as a Black American. Nobody ever taught me this. Did you all know that Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, manipulated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s belief in quote-unquote family planning and birth control in order to justify abortion on a mass scale in the Black community? So much, in fact, that Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood presented him an award for it. And he was one of the first 4 people to ever receive an award from Planned Parenthood. I never knew this, but it gets worse. But before we even get into that, we shouldn't even be surprised to be hearing about any of this, because in my Dr. Martin Luther King documentary, which by the way, if you want to check that out, if you want to check out the full documentary in its entirety, please check it out in the description, which by the way, if you want uncensored and additional videos that you cannot find here on YouTube, please feel free to check out the Patreon and consider becoming a member. But we shouldn't even be shocked to be hearing any of this, because in the Dr. Martin Luther King documentary that I dropped, which is the best video I've ever dropped on this channel by far, we discovered that Dr. Martin Luther King was a pastor who wasn't really even a pastor. Because the truth of the matter is, simple research revealed to me that Dr. Martin Luther King was a pastor that did not even believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. Martin Luther King did not believe in the scriptures at all, for the most part. He did not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. While attending Crozer Theological Seminary in the late 1940s, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote academic papers that explored liberal theological views, including non-literal interpretations of Christian doctrine. In one such paper titled "The Humanity and Divinity of Jesus," King critiqued some traditional doctrines and expressed openness to ideas common in liberal Protestant theology at the time. In his Crozer Seminary paper in 1949, Martin Luther King Jr. stated, "The more Orthodox Christians have interpreted Jesus as the divine Son of God, but the liberal theologians contend that Jesus was not God in the metaphysical sense." He also wrote, "It is quite possible for one to believe in the historical Jesus without accepting the divinity of Jesus, questioning the traditional views of Jesus' divinity as part of his seminary education, not public ministry." I want to make sure we get that understood. He did not talk about this in his public ministry. This was only in his seminary education that he wrote this, that I'm aware of at least. It says here, "The legacy of King must be understood rightly. Martin Luther King as he is remembered." And this is the section where they pretty much just talk about how the general public pretty much recognized Martin Luther King, essentially the way in which we know Martin Luther King, who we know him to be. But if you come down here, it says, "Martin Luther King as he is not remembered." As may be apparent from the title, this article is going to be critical of Dr. Martin Luther King's place in American Christianity. The following is meant to impress upon readers that one should be vigilant not to let popular cultural narratives dictate one's role models, especially on the subject of public faith. The fact is, not only was Dr. King not a good example of public faith for Christians to follow, Dr. King, theologically speaking, was an enemy of God, as will be demonstrated below. Using his own words, which are freely available to the public, Dr. King rejected the Trinity. He called belief in the deity of Jesus Christ harmful and detrimental. He denied the virgin birth and the second coming. He claimed that the Bible contains spiritual insights buried under absurd legends and myths. He even told his congregation on an Easter morning that one's belief about the bodily resurrection of Christ isn't important. This is not speculation or opinion. All this and more is laid out below in extensive quotations straight from his own mouth and pen. By the traditional Christian definition, Martin Luther King Jr. was a false teacher, an antichrist, dispassionately speaking. Now, these facts about Dr. King, while being matters of public record, have strangely not become common knowledge. And so I am not insinuating that everyone who has ever held King up for a Christian example has a seared conscience. My guess is that the material below will be surprising or even disturbing to many readers. Nevertheless, I feel strongly that if so highly esteemed a model for public Christianity as Dr. Martin Luther King was, actually anti-Christian in his confession, Christians must be alerted and informed before holding Dr. King up as an example. Spiritual leaders especially must beware lest they lead their flocks to poison wells. The evidence of apostasy. In 1 Timothy 5:19, the Apostle Paul writes to the young church officer, do not receive an accusation against an elder except from 2 or 3 witnesses. Every extended quotations you read below will be from Dr. King himself. What I am about to do is bury you in these quotations to drive home that I am not cherry picking vague statements out of context nor engaging in hearsay. Martin Luther King Jr. entered Crozer Theological Seminary in 1948, the same year he was ordained a minister at his father's church, Ebenezer Baptist in Atlanta, Georgia. Crozer Seminary, by all accounts, was absolutely poisonous to the Christian faith. Prominent faculty were intent on driving from their students any actual belief in the inspiration of the Bible. Even as a young man of 19, though, King had already become enamored by theological liberalism in college. Moreover, far from undergoing quote-unquote academic brainwashing, he would later recall that he had been harboring skepticism of the Orthodox Christian faith almost since he was old enough to comprehend it. In 1950, writing on his early Ebenezer years for a seminary essay, King reminisced, the lessons which I was taught in Sunday school were quite in the fundamentalist line. None of my teachers ever doubted the infallibility of the scriptures. Most of them were unlettered and had never heard of biblical criticism. Naturally, I accepted the teachings as they were being given to me. I never felt any need to doubt them, at least at the time I didn't. I guess I accepted biblical studies uncritically until I was about 12 years old. But this uncritical attitude could not last long, for it was contrary to the very nature of my being. I had always been the questioning and precocious type. At the age of 13, I shocked my Sunday school class by denying the bodily resurrection of Jesus. From the age of 13 on, doubts began to spring forth unrelentingly. At the age of 15, I entered college, and more could I see a gap between what I had learned in Sunday school and what I was learning in college. This conflict continued until I studied a course in Bible in which I came to see that behind the legends and myths of the book were many profound truths which one could not escape. And for those of you who don't know, the lady Margaret Sanger was born in 1879 and grew up to become a nurse. But more than anything else, she was obsessed with one mission: birth control. She founded what would later become Planned Parenthood and was instrumental in spreading access to contraception across America. But here's the issue: she wasn't just interested in helping women make choices, or the way that they frame it is women's rights or family planning or birth control, when we all know what it actually is. Sanger was also a vocal supporter of something called eugenics, which is the idea that some people are genetically unfit and shouldn't reproduce. Listen to this quote straight from her 1922 book, The Pivot of Civilization. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. Yes, that's a direct quote. She believed the poor, the mentally ill, and yes, the black population was holding back progress. And in 1939, she launched what she called the Negro Project. It was a campaign to spread birth control specifically in black communities in the South. Now, you might be thinking, well, maybe it was to help black poor families. Maybe it was because she really cared. Well, consider this. She wrote in a letter to Dr. Clarence Gamble, who was a physician and heir to the Procter & Gamble soap company fortune, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members." So to make sure everybody's still on the same page with me, she was stating, because she did not care for and thought that the black race was an inferior race, so she felt like birth control or Planned Parenthood, however you want to look at it, was a way to exterminate and keep the black population down. So they frame it as women's rights, birth control, family planning. So one of the biggest ways she felt that she could do this was through the black church, through the black minister, so to speak, because she knew that the black community would listen to black pastors. So stick with me. She knew how this would look, so she planned to use black ministers to push her message, and some did. The black church has always been central to the black community. Sanger understood that if pastors approved, the people would follow. So she used these pastors as messengers. She didn't want to appear as racist. She wanted black leaders to do the convincing. That's how deeply embedded this strategy was. Fast forward to the 1960s. Now remember, Dr. Martin Luther King was born in 1929, and by the time that Dr. Martin Luther King was 15, he was already attending Morehouse College because he was super smart and super advanced. I believe he was pushed like 2 grades ahead, which I have my personal reasons why I think that was. I don't believe it was just because he was so brilliant. It has something to do with MK Ultra, but you have to check out the full documentary that's in the description in order to get more information on that. Fast forward to the 1960s, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rises as the most powerful black voice in America. How convenient. A preacher, a civil rights icon, a man who deeply cared about his people. In 1966, what a lot of people don't know is that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was awarded the Margaret Sanger Award by Planned Parenthood. So it says here, civil rights advocacy. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. Martin Luther King Jr. in his quote-unquote family planning, a special and urgent concern speech. Their blog focuses on Dr. King's strong support for reproductive justice as part of women's basic civil rights. Take a moment and read what they have to say. Meanwhile, here's something you might not know about Dr. King. Dr. King wrote a speech honoring Margaret Sanger in 1966. Sanger was the founder of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Dr. King's speech on reproductive justice was written in response to being awarded one of the 4 first Margaret Sanger Awards given by Planned Parenthood. Since he was in jail at the time of the presentation, Coretta Scott King read his acceptance speech. King entitled his speech, Family Planning, a Special and Urgent Concern. Here's what he said on family planning and is linked to civil rights. There is a striking kinship between our movement and Margaret Sanger's early efforts. She, like we, saw the horrifying conditions of ghetto life. Like we, she knew that all of society is poisoned by cancerous slums. Like we, she was a direct actionist, a nonviolent resistor. She was willing to accept scorn and abuse until the truth she saw was revealed to the millions. At the turn of the century, she went into the slums and set up a birth control clinic. And for this deed, she went to jail because she was violating an unjust law. Yet the years have justified her actions. She launched a movement which is obeying a higher law to preserve human life under humane conditions. Margaret Sanger had to commit what was then called a crime in order to enrich humanity, and today we honor her courage and vision, for without them, there would have been no beginning. Our sure beginning in the struggle for equality by nonviolent direct action may not have been so resolute without the tradition established by Margaret Sanger and people like her. Negroes have no mere academic nor ordinary interest in family planning. They have a special and urgent concern. One element in stabilizing his sick life would be an understanding of and an easy access to the means to develop a family related in size to his community environment and to the income potential he can command. This is not to suggest that the Negro will solve all his problems through Planned Parenthood. His problems are far more complex, encompassing economic security, education, freedom from discrimination, decent housing, and access to culture. Yet if family planning is sensible, it can facilitate or at least not be an obstacle to the resolution of the many profound problems that plague him. Some commentators point out that with present birth rates, it will not be long before Negroes are a majority in many of the major cities of the nation. As a consequence, they can be expected to take political control, and many people are apprehensive at this prospect. Negroes do not seek political control by this means. They seek only what they are entitled to and do not wish for domination purchased at the cost of human misery. Negroes were once bred by slave owners to be sold as merchandise. They do not welcome any solution which involves population breeding as a weapon. They are instinctively sympathetic to all who offer methods that will improve their lives and offer them fair opportunity to develop and advance as other people in our society. as all other people in our society. For these reasons, we are natural allies of those who seek to inject any form of planning in our society that enriches life and guarantees the right to exist in freedom and dignity. I'm a bit confused reading this. It almost sounds like he's against it. I'm so confused here. It seems like he supports it, but then in some aspect he doesn't. I want people to understand this before we continue, and I'll show you this quote. You can be as progressive as you want, bro, but we were not taught this. All right, guys, a responsible thing for me to do here is just pause real fast and say that I did a little bit of research after I recorded this video because I was very confused after I read that article. And to be fair, it is unclear how Dr. Martin Luther King felt about abortion in itself, even though it is clear that he said things such as, there is scarcely anything more tragic in human life than a child who is not wanted. And to him, unwanted, unplanned pregnancies were a quote-unquote cruel evil that urgently needed control. And while it's probably safe to say that he probably didn't support abortion, I don't want to just jump to that conclusion because I'm a bit confused. While I do still believe that Margaret Sanger took advantage and was a bit misleading and deceiving with what her full intentions were, I can't say one way or the other responsibly if Dr. King absolutely stood for abortion or not, the way some of these more modern pastors do, like we're about to speak about. My understanding, my previous understanding of Dr. Martin Luther King was not that he was more like a modern day Jamal Bryant or a modern day Mike Todd. I thought he was more like a modern day Pastor Geno Jennings, right? These pastors that are unapologetically the Bible, and he don't care what society thinks of him. That's not who Dr. Martin Luther King was. Because at the end of the day, the fetus inside of a woman's womb, that's the only way we can get here. That's the only way us as humans can get here is through a woman's womb. And the fetus is just a stage in human development. It doesn't matter if you're Christian or not. It doesn't matter if you believe in God or not. Science states this. When you look at a teenager, you don't look at a teenager and say, that's not a human being, that's a teenager. No, you'd say that's both a human and a teenager. The teenager is just a stage in human development. We've come up with a name for it. Fetus is just a stage in human development. We've all went through that stage before and now we're here. The fact that a pastor is supporting this to the level that he did, even if he thought of it as family planning, is not only crazy, but is evil. But here's the issue. By accepting the award, Dr. King unintentionally helped give legitimacy to an organization whose founder believed in black population control. And let's talk why this is important. Let's look at the impact that it's had on the black community as of today. Over 19 million black babies have been aborted since Roe v. Wade in 1973. That's evil, man. That's evil. Today, Planned Parenthood clinics are disproportionately located in black neighborhoods. In places like New York City, more black babies are aborted than born alive some years. These are not conspiracy theories. These are public statistics. What began as quote-unquote family planning became a pipeline of black population reduction, just like Sanger envisioned. This is mind-blowing. Oh yeah, Didi got a podcast.